Hi guys, as you know, I'm part of the planning committee for the Colorado hiking trip, and part of what we wanted to do was make sure that we share with you some tips and advice as to ways to be prepared, not only for the equipment side and the climate and conditions, but also the physical side. And so I've put together a few videos on some of the training methods that I've used. Again, it's not an exhaustive list of training strategies that are out there. Again, there's people that are going to be way more fit than I am on the trip. You know, I'm just your average guy putting some things together, things that I've settled on and have kind of worked for me, and they're approaching it in three different directions. One is the traditional steady state, medium and low intensity running, the jogging, the walking, the hiking. Common staple in all of the training programs. One thing that I felt was it didn't solve all the issues. It addressed some of the issues with the hikes, and so I added a couple different more things to my program, and I just want to share those with you. One being the strength training. You know, again, we talk about going on a hike and we're worried about the low oxygen concentration and what that's going to do to our breathing and how we're going to get worn out on that. But don't overlook the fact that we're going to be carrying 15, 20, 25 pounds of weight that we're not used to walking around with on a daily basis. We are going to be taking big steps. Some of the paths are smooth and fairly slight incline. Some of them you are stepping up 2 and 3 feet onto the next level, that be that a boulder or a step or a tree stump or whatever. You're stepping up, and then when you're coming down, there is all this force that goes on your body, on your legs, as to keeping yourself upright and not letting you just start running down the hill. So we've got to take care of our core, our back, our shoulders, legs, all those things come into play. The other one that I've talked about, and that I utilize, and I credit it with some great strides in my efforts and my conditioning, and that's the high intensity interval training. That's the one where we go out and do heavy workload, intense workload, and then a rest period, workload, a rest period. And by workload, I'm talking about, if we're talking about sprints, you're sprinting for 20 seconds and resting for 30 seconds, or resting for 20 seconds or 10 seconds or a minute. You know, it just matters what your level that you're coming in. You rotate, you repeat that cycle 4, 6, 8, 10 times. Really, we're talking about 3 to 5. Sometimes people do it lower intensity, 10 and 15 minutes. I have settled on real intense interval training where I'm in and out in less than 5 minutes, and so that's worked well for me, and I want to share that with you. But this video, I actually want to talk about an exercise that I do that really you could classify it in, I mean, you could put it into just about every one of those 3 prongs. The steady state cardio for lung capacity and oxygen conversion, the high intensity, and then the strength training. And what I'm talking about here is what we call a high intensity resistance training. And I've got a little video of the one that I use. And really what you're trying to do is, instead of running sprints, you're actually doing those some resistance training that is stretching your body, and you're approaching it in an anaerobic way. Just to explain again about anaerobic versus aerobic, what we've got is, there's my boy. What we've got is anaerobic is what happens when your body is not getting enough oxygen from your breathing, and it's utilizing the energy stores in your muscles and your bloodstream. It tries to convert the easy stuff into bloodstream, but what prompts that is a lack of oxygen. Okay, and so we all have an anaerobic threshold. And what that is when we work ourselves past a point that our body can take in the oxygen and use it in the energy creation or the feeding of the muscles, it goes into an anaerobic state. And when you're in an anaerobic state, because you're not able to utilize oxygen, you're using everything in your body. And that again, we talked about glycogen stores, and when those get depleted, your body just can't do it. That's why we can't sprint for a mile. Okay, we can sprint for 100 yards, and then we're out of breath. Now you can get a fast pace for a mile, but those are people that have increased their anaerobic threshold to a point that they're able to convert oxygen very efficiently, okay? And so they don't get to a point where they're eating away at their muscles and they're eating away, they haven't depleted all the glycogen in their body, okay? The anaerobic state is good for those short bursts. God created us. I mean, it's just wonderful to think about the simplicity of the entirety, but the complexity of the individual components, and it's just amazing. But anyway, so the anaerobic state is where you're real intense and you're not using oxygen. And then the aerobic state is that when you are breathing, you're doing some type of movement, but you're breathing and the oxygen intake is keeping up with it. And so what's happening is you're breathing and you're taking that oxygen and it's combining with different fuel sources in your body, and you're fueling your muscles, and that process is flushing the lactic acid out of our muscles. And so if you're on a slow jog, you don't normally get sore. When you're in an anaerobic, where you're not getting the oxygen, real intense, lifting weights or whatever, and you get that, what happens is lactic acid can't get out because you don't have the oxygen keeping things moving, and so it builds up in your muscles, and that's where you get soreness and stiffness from. So what I'm talking about here with the high intensity resistance training takes into the anaerobic side, where you're lifting some weights. Okay, and it's pretty intense, but then you can take some rest and you catch your breath, so you get back aerobically, then you start it over again, and you're just at a pace where you're not passing out or anything like that, but you're stressing yourself, okay? And the other thing is, you can work yourself up to some, some dumbbells that are creating some muscle. Now, you're not going to be a big muscle builder, bodybuilder doing this, because that's not what it's intended to do. You will get toned. You will increase some lean muscle mass, and you will shed fat. I'm telling you, this is the way to go if you're wanting to shed fat. The high intensity, I can talk to you about how it studies have shown it's the most effective way to burn, to get lean, okay? So, but here's what I'm talking about, and I'll show you a video shortly, but the premise behind this is to work yourself with resistance to a point where you're breathing heavy and you're getting that high intensity portion, that anaerobic side, but then also slowing down enough to catch your breath. And you keep it up for about 15 minutes, okay? And this is a full body workout. This is why I love it for what we're talking about doing. So here's my routine. I get a weight, and please check your egos at the door, because this is tough, okay? You may do the first 2 or 3 or whatever, and you think, no big deal. But by the time you get into that 7-8 minute mark, you're thinking, why did I pick this weight? Okay, so here's what you should set it at. First of all, when you first start this, I would say start with an extremely low weight, whatever that is for you. And to be honest with you, I'm trying to get my 83-year-old dad to do some of this, and I'm telling him, don't pick up a weight, just use your arms, okay? And so what we're going to do is we do a cycle is sets of 6, and then 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1. And each one of those 6s has 4 different movements that we're going to do. The first movement, okay, stay with me on this. The first movement is going to be the standing overhead shoulder press. And if you don't know what that is, I'm going to show it to you in this video. What we're talking about doing here is taking some dumbbells that you could lift when you get up to a certain point of conditioning. This is where I want you to be. If you could lift a weight over your head pretty easily 12 times, that's the weight I want you to start off with. The hardest part of this, the most weight sensitive part of this, is the overhead shoulder press, standing shoulder press. Okay, so that's where we're going to start. Okay, so and what you're going to do is you're going to take your dumbbells that you can do 12 times, and you're going to do 6 presses overhead. Okay, and you're going to go straight from that, no rest, and you're going to rack those dumbbells on your shoulders, and then you're going to do a deep squat. And I'm not talking about just going, parallel thighs. I'm talking about going deeper than that. So deep squats, and you do that for 6 times. Then we're going to stand. We're going to be back up, and we're going to do dumbbell rows, and we're going to do 6 of those. I guess 6 of those. And again, we're working on form. We're pinching the shoulders back, and those are easy. I mean, we compare that to the 6 overhead. The dumbbell rows are easy. And then you turn around and without rest, and you do 6 deadlifts. And they're not your traditional in front deadlifts. What I try and do here is when we rack them on the shoulders, and you go down into the squats, if you're pushing with your heels, you're working your hamstrings. Okay. When we do the deadlifts, we're really working the legs. I kind of want you to be a little bit tipped forward, but not too much. But we're going to work the quads in that one. Okay, so you're getting a full body, and you're going to do 6 of those. And then, if you can, without resting, pick it back up, do 5. 5. And you keep going. And this video is showing you that rotation of 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of those 4 exercises. And you do that cycle, and when you get done with one, you move into the second one. What I want you to try and do here is get 3 sets or 3 cycles in around 15 minutes. Okay? It sounds like that's not too big of a deal, but it is. You should be sweating heavily, and you should be breathing very hard. That's what I want you to work up to. Now, when you first start doing it, what I would say is do it for form, and don't work it to a point where you're sweating heavy and sucking air. I want you to get your body to get some muscle memory there, some understanding of the movements, and then when you go and you start hitting it hard, you've got your form down and everything like that. But this is a great way to do some cardio improvement, some endurance improvement, and some strength improvement right in one exercise for 15 minutes. And if you did this exercise once or twice, I'm telling you what, if you guys did this once or twice a week, this would just about be all that you would need to feel good about getting to Colorado. Now, we don't want to just feel good, we want to feel great. So that's why I also want you to do some other types of strength training, some lunges and things like that. The steady state, the medium and low intensity cardio, and the high intensity sprints. Okay? If you have any questions, feel free to give me a shout, brothers. Cell phone 785-979-3113, or give me a shout through an email, jake@yourcsc.com. That's JAKE@YOURCSC.com. Thanks, guys.